Why does Director Veronica Fincher refuse shelter transparency? Why does she make it so difficult for people to volunteer for dog walking programs? And why has she put so much time and effort into finding ways to get rid of passionate and long-time volunteers? Director Fincher's zeal to get rid of volunteers who simply want to work with and save animals is frightening. Her keenness to retaliate against good employees who muster up the courage to blow a whistle on her abusive practice both intimidates and puts fear in anyone who might want to speak up to save animals in the future from abuse.
Under Veronica Fincher, there are fewer volunteers, fewer dogs are getting walked, and cats being socialized. Under Veronica, there's been a huge reduction in the pet population. In what areas is the shelter thriving? Most likely for Veronica and staff with fewer animals to care for.
You know, hearing about the Hearts of Animals Club that were here just minutes ago, that's a great thing to see, an awesome thing to see, obviously. But why do you appreciate their efforts, the efforts of those volunteers from the Hearts of Animals Club, and not the efforts of the actual shelter volunteers?
This is a presentation to the Hearts for Animal Club and Rancho Cucamonga High School for their support of the Animal Care and Services Center.
And thank you, when you should probably be home studying, for taking the time out and having to study a little bit later tonight than you might otherwise had to, for coming down here to allow your city council to recognize you for your volunteer efforts. We really do truly, truly appreciate it.
Just focus on the firing of volunteers for a second. Is that acceptable? Yes or no? I was here in the middle of January, came all the way from LA, or Redondo Beach to be specific, and gave a public comment then regarding this same issue. One of the people that spoke before me was this guy right here, Jesse, my man Jesse right behind me. He was a current employee when he gave the comment. He spoke about the manager's tactics, Veronica Fincher. He was put on administrative leave 2 weeks later and fired a week after that. Is that acceptable? Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. To me, that validates where these volunteers are coming from, what they're saying. It is a precedent. You speak out, you get fired. That's wrong. You all should know that.
Veronica Fincher is quoted as saying, in 2012, 84% of the dogs and cats that were at the Animal Care and Services Center were placed in new homes with rescue and adoption partners or were reunited with their owners. Okay, here's how they kind of come to their 84%. I rounded for simplicity. Okay, you have 200 dogs coming into the shelter. You kill 80 of them. You say they're sick, aggressive, they don't count. They're off the radar. That leaves you with about 120. Of that 120, 19 are euthanized later for whatever reason. So you have 101 that you're going to work with adopting. That's your 84% adoptable rate. But in reality, you killed 99 dogs. This is why we want transparency. This is why we want to go in and look at 2012, pull the records.
My name is Jennifer. I have been a volunteer 2009 through 2012. However, I was dismissed as well by Veronica. This one particular photo is of a walk chart. This is how we keep track of the dogs being walked that are at the shelter. This was dated August 20th of 2012. Okay, and you see there's a lot of initials, a lot of signatures. So now we're going to fast forward to April 16th, 2013. Well, I think the photo speaks for itself. Okay, now we're going to look at April 22nd, 2013, 1 week later. We have on both pages, just a week apart, the same dogs. No signatures, no initials, no walking.
First, I want to say that I've been listening to these people for months now from the animal shelter. I've been a resident here for 40 years. I have a adopted dog named Max. I don't know where I'd be without him. A great little guy. I really hope that we're going to do something about this shelter and the way it's being run.
The state of Florida recently passed something called the Shelter Transparency Act, which requires shelters to release monthly reports on the number of animals that have been adopted, transferred to rescue groups, reclaimed, euthanized, and more. In February 2012, a group of concerned volunteers asked Director Veronica Fincher if they could access this information after they noticed a reduction in the number of available dogs, along with the implementation of a policy that left incoming animals lacking names. The group of volunteers also knew that the previous year's reports were extremely questionable and that the same staff person was responsible for preparing them. This attempt to access information was denied, and the request was cited as a violation while dismissing one of the volunteers.
It is a fact that there has been a reduction in animals, a reduction in volunteers, and fewer volunteer orientations since Veronica started. And how many volunteers have started since the March 23rd orientation? None, because they are still going through background investigations. That means there have been no new volunteers since the last orientation that was done in September 2012.
So they're bringing in a new program as far as getting new volunteers, and it's called an investigative background check. Okay, they're volunteering in an animal shelter to do laundry, wash dishes, enrichment programs, walk dogs, socialize with cats. They're not offering a public service. They're not trying to get a job with law enforcement. So to do a characterization profile, I don't find it to be applicable to do the services that are needed as a volunteer. Have the high school students gone through an investigative background check to provide any of these services? I highly doubt that. And I think it's absolutely fabulous that the high school students are there volunteering. And by the way, the city is paying for all these background checks. And once the live scan is done, then here comes the interview with the proverbial question to the subjective volunteer. How do you feel about euthanasia? Oh, well, that's the killer question right there, because if they don't believe in euthanasia, sorry, your file, forget about it. You're not going to be a volunteer here.
The photo that I have up here is of me when I met Little Red. She is one of the victory dogs who survived the cruel, abusive torture from pro football player Michael Vick. She was used as a bait dog. All of her teeth were removed, and she still has lasting scars on her body. However, Little Red has a great happy ending. She actually has her CGC certificate, and she was adopted into a wonderful home. The Humane Society of the United States and many other animal organizations actually said that these dogs should have been euthanized, that they could not have been rehabilitated, seeing what they had gone through and any potential behavior issues. But again, 22 of them have gone on to be very successful, had their CGC, as well as becoming reading dogs, which is something that our city program used to do. The reason why I'm bringing up Little Red and the experience that I had working with Best Friends, as well as doing internships with Animal Farm Foundation and also Longmont Humane Society doing multi-dog playgroup training, is because in the article that came out in the paper today about the animal shelter, the assistant city manager, Lori Sassoon, was quoted as saying that the animal center staffers are highly qualified, trained experts who bring specific expertise in how to evaluate animal behavior, and that decisions are matters of professional judgment that need to be made when it comes to euthanizing animals, and it's not done lightly. Ms. Fincher was also quoted in this article as saying that all options are exhausted for every animal that is euthanized. I'd like to show you one example of why that's not true. This is Yogi. He was a young male who came into the center in August of 2012. A sweet guy. We were able to actually get Yogi into our play groups. He was an intact male, and a lot of people thought, well, that's not going to work, but we were able to get him in. This photo was taken on November 4th, 2012. Yogi was actually killed for behavioral reasons on November 12th, 2012, one day after Susan Keithley was dismissed, and 2 days before myself and Vicki Roost and Jennifer Corso were dismissed. Up here you can actually see the notes that were given after we did a request for them on Yogi. Basically, Yogi's jumping and spitting in his kennels, unable to crate due to behavior, no open kennels or runs to contain. I don't see anywhere that rescues were contacted. I don't see anywhere that any other behavioral evaluations or behavior plan was used to help save Yogi. Again, he's just one example. We have many of these. So we just want to reiterate that we are willing to work and help with these animals, okay, because they need it. And Little Red and her friends are a great example of that.
They've closed ranks. We're the enemy. But when we were there, more dogs and cats were there. More dogs thrived. More dogs were happy. You had more dog walkers. Veronica can't blame us for the reduction in volunteer dog walkers. We're not there anymore.
The main thing here is these people want their positions as volunteers back. That's it. Can they get those positions back, or can they get a legitimate reason as to why they were fired on record? They were fired for insubordination. Well, if telling the truth is defined as insubordination, if talking about trickery behind the save and kill numbers is insubordination, if advocating on the dogs themselves is insubordination, then I guess I support insubordination.
We started with a very simple, when I say we, I'm talking specifically myself and Nicole Meyerchin, with a meeting with Mayor Alexander. He was very, very receptive to our concerns about what was going on at the shelter way back when. It took us several years to get to the point, meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, subcommittee this and this and that. Finally, it wasn't until we got a hold of Tammy Bryant, who was the person that co-wrote the Hayden Law, about animal rights in the shelters, and that really seemed to get your attention. So much to the fact that you guys were willing to spend a big chunk of change bringing Nathan Winograd, who's considered to be the nation, maybe even the world's foremost guru on running a no-kill shelter. My question is, what happened? Because after 3 years of dealing with this, I gave up on it. Once we got the thing passed, wrested it from county control, I thought we were okay. Clearly, we are not. My heart is so heavy to hear what these folks are saying about the shelter. Again, I am not aligning myself with these folks. I need to know more about it. But just what I've heard in general, it is heartbreaking that we did not learn from way back when. We brought Winograd in here, and he said, this is what you do. Part of the problem is I think it comes down to leadership, which Michelle Pereira so eloquently did with the city or with the library. So I'll be back every week or every 2 weeks, just so you know. But where there's smoke, there's fire. We know better. We can do better than this. Thank you so much.
Sir? Thank you.
What happened to No Dog Left Behind? This was a monthly event held on Saturday and or Sunday where volunteers would come out and see that every dog in the shelter got walked. Last time this event was done was in February when, for the very first time, the event was scheduled for 2 days since there weren't enough volunteers in January to get all of the dogs walked in 1 day. I guess now they don't even have enough volunteers to get the dogs walked in 2 days, so they've just stopped doing it. Some dogs will go 3 weeks without getting walked.
It wasn't until Veronica was hired that the vet techs needed additional help with euthanizing dogs. Never have I heard of the vet techs needing help with euthanizing animals. It wasn't until Veronica came that I would see several animals lined up to be put down.
The animal attorney got up here after reviewing public records of the shelter's own documents and proved that they do not have an adoption rate of 84% they are claiming. The number was actually closer to 40%, but they are repeating their 84% numbers.
The public wants to know. We are being criticized for only saving dogs. There are horrible things being said about us. They are untrue. We are not saying anything that is not true, and we have reports, records, numbers to back up what we're saying.
Not only have we been asking for a sit-down or town hall meeting that would give them a chance to defend themselves, but what is to stop them from coming up here and doing exactly what we are doing? Foster and fundraising volunteers have come up and spoke out on behalf of the shelter. Why can't other employees or Veronica herself come up here? If I was innocent of something and someone was getting up here and accusing me of something that wasn't true, you could bet money on the fact that I would get up here with facts and proving them otherwise.
You know, all this is about a YouTube video, right? That's what started all this, and a dog named Rosalinda. Rest in peace to her, because she was killed, and so many others have been killed behind closed doors.
The volunteers are not the people Veronica portrays them to be. These volunteers love these animals so much, they are willing to stay strong after you have ignored them for over a year.
Why did she encourage her staff to spy on volunteers and be hostile towards them?
My husband even heard a conversation in the hallway between the director and a shelter employee laughing and saying, these rescues actually think we're going to work with them.
At the April 17th meeting, two speakers, Nicole and Kelly, talked about how upset they were that they needed to attend years of city council meetings to even get the shelter out of county hands and into city management. If they had to come for years to get that done, it's obvious that many on this council never cared about the issue in the first place. John Gillison, you're a first-year city manager, elected by this council, and within the first 2 months of acquiring this new position, you hired an inexperienced director who came directly from a kill shelter. It made absolutely no sense to bring someone in like this to oversee a no-kill shelter, especially a shelter director with a battle cry of, I have a 5-year plan. The shelter and the plight of animals within it should be more to you than just a yearly photo op at a community dog walking event.
This is free help, guys. Volunteers that were doing an awesome job, dismissed for speaking out. Can they get their positions back? It's a simple question. It should be a simple answer.
How much longer does this need to continue?